And that is a fact. My wife and I are farmers in Chicken Bristle, Kentucky, and we are so proud to be with you, just like we are proud to be with you every time that you've got the courage and the conviction to stand up for what is right. And if I have a hard time talking tonight, it's not because it's cold, my face is frozen, but I have been smiling solidly for the last 1 hour, listening to these people speak and looking at your beautiful faces. Now we're here tonight because we got to send a message. And though tomorrow, I'm very, very confident in what is going to happen in the House of Representatives, they will vote to impeach Donald Trump. But then they're going to send articles of impeachment to the Senate. And so our message, my message tonight, is not to the House of Representatives. We know what they're going to do tomorrow, but to Senator Mitch McConnell and the Republican-led Senate. So, let's hear it. Do your job. Okay. Now we've tried to send messages before. Last winter, we marched for women's equality and protection from violence. Did Mitch McConnell listen then? No. Back in August, we stood on his step here in Louisville and we demand he takes action against gun violence. Was he listening to us then? No. Over the summer, we celebrated with pride the advancements that our LGBTQ brothers and sisters have made in the pursuit of equality. But do you think Mitch McConnell was listening? No. And just 2 months ago, we sang and we prayed with the Poor People's Campaign as they continued their slow march for social and racial equality across this country. But do you think Mitch McConnell was listening? No. Well, they need to start listening now, because the message is very, very clear. And it's a point that it's mind-boggling that we need to be making. And I'll tell you why. Because the message that no man is above the law and that we are all equal in the eyes of the law was so fundamental to the foundation of our country that the founding fathers called it self-evident. Now, the President of the United States stands accused of using his office and your tax dollars to bully a courageous ally, Ukraine, standing against the violence and corruption of the Russian Republic for his own gain. And what his Republican enablers would want you to believe, that it was not for his political gain, but because he has a very, very keen interest in corruption. No, they could have a point. They could have a point. Let's go over the details. Last year, Donald Trump was forced to pay $25 million back to the poor students that he bilked out of their hard-earned money in the phony baloney Trump University. Just this year, the President of the United States was forced to pay $2 million in fines and penalties for using a charity in his own name as a slush fund for his political campaign and for his failing businesses, instead of using it for cancer patients and veterans like he claimed. This is the man who employs undocumented workers in his resorts and casinos while tearing apart migrant families at our southern border and caging their children. And finally, this is the man who proudly brags about sexually assaulting women and getting away from it because of his power and his prestige. So I think I'm starting to agree with some of the Republicans. The president does have a keen interest in corruption, just not exactly the way they mean. Excuse me. You know, I always believed in the promise of Dr. King that the arc of history bends towards justice. But he was not telling us to stand idle. He was not telling us to sit and wait for better days. He was telling us to stand and march and show up every time we need to send a message to our government that no man is above the law. Now, a lot of people in this country are not happy with this process. In fact, they're threatening civil war. We've got self-described patriots who are threatening civil war in this country. We have got overzealous religious leaders who are threatening civil war in this country. We have a United States congressman from the state of Kentucky who is using racist dog whistles, code words for civil war and correspondence on social media with his followers. Well, my friends, let me tell you something about civil war. Other than our friends at the Somali Center, a couple miles away from here, there's very few of us who've seen civil war. But let me tell you what it looks like. Very first, the poor and the dispossessed are driven off or killed. And then groups, first large groups, then they devolve into small groups, arm themselves and begin fighting. They destroy their cities and they tear up their infrastructure until there's nothing left. And when the fighting fizzles out, all that is left are the widows and the orphans to pick over the carcasses of once great cities at the hands and terror of armed gangs. This is what they are threatening us with if we impeach and remove Donald Trump. Well, I'll tell you what, their time is running out because they are so wrong. And we're sending a clear message to Mitch McConnell and the Senate, they need to do their job and that no one is above the law. Now, they've ignored us before. They've ignored us before about guns, about violence, about immigration, but they can't ignore this. They cannot ignore this because the clock is winding down. The arc of history very quickly is bending towards November 3rd, 2020, when you will not only be able to exercise your right to speak, but your right to vote and vote out a leadership in the Senate that refuses to do their jobs and protect a corrupt president. My friends, until that day, we'll continue to assemble peacefully. We'll continue to let our voices be heard. We'll comfort each other in times of darkness, but we will never, ever stop sending a message to Washington, D.C. through our voice, and ultimately through our voice, that this is the United States of America, and no man is above the law. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, Kimberly.